The notification scared you. Oh, poor Sassy. How you doing? Now for the scariest part. Adjusting my blanket. Ah, there we go. Alright, that was pretty merciful. Fucker. Motherfucker times 2. God damn it. What the fuck? Why are there always so many wires? Well, I know why. Finish your sandwich and you're now ready to take over the world? This is the best state of affairs. If only my wires were neater, or shorter, or longer, or not the way that they are. Oh god, why? Okay, there we go. Oh. You know what I'm in the mood for? Perhaps after an 8-hour nap, though. Taking over the world? Yes. Always better done with sleep. For sure, for sure. I'm actually finally in a comfortable position. What am I in the mood for? I'm torn between Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe. Jesus. Okay. Why not both? It'll probably be both. Although I just found something interesting. Shit, I gotta look at that later. Why do I always get distracted during these games? These streams? God damn it. Alright, fuck. I found an article on how China lost its ghost stories. Can we read this first? This is really interesting. Okay, hold on. Alright. So this article is called The Strange Tale of How China Lost Its Ghost Stories. From The Sixth Tone. By Fuman Singh. If you ask the average person in China for their favorite ghost story, their answer will almost certainly be Pu Songling's 300-year-old classic Strange Tales from a Chinese studio. But push just a bit harder. Which of Pu's stories are their favorite, and what other authors do they like? And you'll likely be met with an embarrassed shrug. Although ghost stories were among most popular genres of Chinese literature for nearly 2 millennia, contemporary Chinese are almost wholly estranged from this literary tradition. The state of contemporary horror is little better. Although adaptations of ghosts, gods, and demons from traditional literature have become reliable box office fodder, the film industry remains bound by an unspoken rule. Nothing supernatural is allowed to happen after the founding of the People's Republic. The roots of this taboo predate the PRC by several decades. While literati in Imperial China often used ghost stories to teach Confucian morality and defend the social order, early 20th century intellectuals and reformers saw China's long-standing fondness for the supernatural as an obstacle to modern scientific development. Between 1917 and 1918, some of the leading pioneers of China's New Culture movement, including the philosopher Hu Shi, future co-founder of the Communist Party of China Chen Duxiu, and the writer Zhou Zuoren, all published essays in the influential New Youth magazine that drew a firm line between the worlds of the living, characterized by modernity, democracy, and scientific progress, and the backward, superstitious realm of the dead. In Zhou Zuoren's essay, Humane Literature, he lists nine kinds of non-human topics to be avoided, including gods, demons, and ghosts. Even universally beloved classics like Pu's Strange Tales, The Investiture of the Gods, and Journey to the West were singled out for criticism. Of course, not everyone agreed with the New Culture movement's firm stand against ghosts. The mid-1930s witnessed a brief resurgence in essays and stories about the supernatural. But this renaissance proved short-lived. After the founding of the People's Republic in 1949, socialist realism was enshrined as the country's official literary theory, and ghosts, once again, were exorcised from popular literature. Unlike the New Culture movement, however, China's new rulers still saw value in deploying ghosts for political purposes. His contemporaries noted that Mao Zedong was a studious reader of Pu's Strange Tales, citing it on numerous occasions and using the stories Xi, Fangping, and the Wolf as political allegories for the darkness of officialdom and class struggle, respectively. In China's early 20th century, if China's early 20th century literati sought to expel ghosts from literature and for being non-human, Mao's reading went in the opposite direction. Ghosts in literature were not manifestations of the supernatural, but metaphors for various real and very human political enemies. To defeat literary ghosts became an allegory for frightening off your political enemies. In 1959, as China was descending into the period of international isolation, Mao instructed He Qifang, the director of the Institute of Literature and at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, to select classic stories of humans defeating ghosts and compile them into a new book, Stories About Not Being Afraid of Ghosts. Alright. Okay. Alright. Okay. After decades of official and unofficial suppression of ghost stories, the book, which contains 70 tales of the strange, from the Six Dynasties period all the way up to the Qing Dynasty, it became a phenomenon. More than 200,000 copies were published. It was used in cadre training courses, and at Mao's order was translated into several languages, including English. Wait, is this a thing? Can I get this book? Alright, whatever. The stories selected give an idea of how the compilation was intended to be read. The opening piece, Song Ding Bo Sells a Ghost, from the record of the search for spirits, bears a startling resemblance to Oscar Wilde's humorous story, The Canterville Ghost. Song Ding Bo, meets a ghost at night, fools the ghost into thinking that Song is actually a newborn ghost, takes advantage of the spirit, and tricks it into telling him its weakness. Song then carries the old ghost to the market. When the ghost turns into a sheep, Song spits on it to prevent it from changing back and sells it for a large sum. The ghost is hardly the villain in the piece, indeed, as in The Canterville Ghost. The ghost in Song Ding Bo can be seen as the victim of human mistreatment. To ensure readers took away the correct message, Li Qifeng's preface to the compilation makes it clear the ghosts are to be outsmarted, not feared. Only if we are cowards and do not emancipate our minds, Hlo writes, will China's enemies be able to haunt it. At the same time, the use of ghosts in literature was strictly policed. In 1963, the central government launched a no-ghost drama campaign targeting Meng Chao's ghost-centric opera, Li Huinyang, and the intellectuals who had backed it. In 1966, the People's Daily published an editorial titled Sweeping Away All Ghosts and Demons, inaugurating the decade-long cultural revolution. In the next 10 years, declaring one's enemies as ghosts was a common political tactic. Yet, just as Sigmund Freud noted, the repressed always returns in some strange yet familiar form. The 10 years of cultural revolution not only suppressed feudal superstition, but also alienated the Chinese people from their traditions. By the 1980s, when the Chinese went searching for what they had lost, a decade of pent-up interest indirectly contributed to the return of ghosts to the world. As root-seeking literature eschewed the tropes of revolutionary discourse in favor of the forgotten totems and beliefs, a wave of adaptations of literary classics were filmed. According to scholar Luo Hui, in the 1980s and 90s, nearly 60 different adaptations of Pooh's strange tales were filmed. So, have ghosts and other tales of the strange made a comeback? If we only look at published literature, the answer is mixed. There are shades of ghosts in serious literature, such as Mo Yan's reincarnated narrator and Life and Death Are Wearing Me Out. But human literature remains the default. However, if we turn to online literature, the situation looks very different. Alongside other long-shunned genres like fantasy, the short ghost story has shown signs of recovery. Take Ma Boyang's New Chronicles, for example. Consisting of 10 Strange Tales-style short stories published online between 2015 and 2016, it offers a glimpse of what Chinese ghost stories might look like in the internet age. In Ma's The Ghost of Wuhan University, published shortly after news outlets reported that officials in the central city were spot-checking citizens to see if they could recite China's 24 core socialist values, the Taoist priest Bao Shu catches 5 wandering ghosts chanting sutras and disturbing patrons of the Wuhan University Library. When Bao asks why they are disturbing people, a ghost replies that they're tired of hearing residents constantly repeat the same 24 words and went to the library to hide. that's brilliant. Oh. When Bao asks why they themselves have started chanting the phrases, the ghost's response is even curiouser. Honestly, yeah, that's empathy right there. Oh, man. The ghost's response is even curiouser. If a person recites this sutra, they can exorcise ghosts. If a ghost recites this sutra, they can exorcise people! Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, I could not have hoped for a better response. Oh. These ghosts are the best ghosts. Oh my god, I'm so glad I read this article. Oh, that's amazing. In the words of Zhou Zuoren, I don't believe that people die and become ghosts, but I believe that behind people there are ghosts. For as long as ghosts are still useful as political allegories, the battle between ghosts and humans in Chinese literature will carry on. Okay. Oh, man. Well, now I have to find that book. Holy shit. I can't. Oh, no. Hold on. Oh shit, they're all in Chinese. Fuck. Oh yeah, they don't exist in English. Hold on, I'm trying to track some of these down. Yeah, that's all I can find. Shit. That was delightful, though. I'm so glad we looked into that. Alright. Well, okay. And now for the feature presentation. Sorry. I just had to go off on that tangent because I saw that article and I was just like, wait, hold up. So I'm looking through Poe now. I don't know if I've ever read The Telltale Heart. I feel like I must have. But I don't remember it. Y'all good for some Telltale Heart? I think I'm just playing to an audience of sassy right now. I'm pretty sure that's the deal. I don't think I read it on stream. I don't think I've read it at all. Alright, cool. This is the Telltale Heart. True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? Oh, I have read this. The disease has sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing. Acute. I heard all things in heaven and in earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived it haunted me day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man. He'd never wronged me. He'd never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen knew nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded. With what caution. With what foresight. With what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh, so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern. All closed, so that no light shone out. And I thrust in my head. Oh, he would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head in within the opening, so far I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well within the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it. Just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did, for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. It was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone and inquiring how he'd passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked upon him while he slept, Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could hardly contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he had not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, with the thick darkness, for the shutters were close-fastened, through fear of robbers. And so I knew he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing on steadily. I had my head in. I was about to open the lantern. My thumb slipped upon the tin fastening. The old man sprang up in the bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour did I not move but a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in bed, listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. 'Twas not a pain or grief moan, no. 'Twas the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he'd been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in bed. His fears have been ever since growing upon him. He'd been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He'd been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It's only a mouse crossing the floor." Or, "It's merely a cricket, which has made a single chirp." Yes, he's been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he has found all in vain. All in vain. Because death, in approaching him, has stalked with its black shadow before him, and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a single dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot out from the crevice and full upon the vulture eye. 'Twas open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones, but I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And now have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the senses? Now I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as the watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. 'Twas the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held on the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mock me? Well, I have told you that I am nervous. So I am. And now at the dead hour of night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder, louder. I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once, and once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, it was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart, and it held there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you'll think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and arms and legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber, and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatsoever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. Ha ha! When I had made an end to these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled. For what did I have to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room, and desired them here to rest from their fatigues. While I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted familiar things, but ere long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat and chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definitiveness until, at length, I found the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale. But I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased. And what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound. Much as the sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath. Yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly and more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. What would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observation of the men. But the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards. But the noise all rose all over and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and the men still chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no, no, they heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now, again, hark, louder, 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 louder! Villains! I shrieked. Dissemble no more. I admit the deed, tear up the planks, here, here. It's the beating of his hideous heart. Oh, and it just ends there? Oh, I just crescendoed off a cliff. Fuck me. Whoops. I forgot that it just ends that way. Anticlimactic as fuck, right? I mean, my performance didn't make it better. I was just like building and building and building, and then it just ends. Have we done the Black Cat? Do you remember? The Black Cat? I don't think so either. I just looked at Lovecraft stuff, and he has like at least sorry, he has like he also has cats. Rats in the walls. I don't know if we've ever done these. We'll visit them in a bit. We ought to have another Lovecraft tonight. Some of these look really good. Alright. This is the Black Cat. For the most wild, yet most homely narrative which I am about to pen, I neither expect nor solicit belief. Mad indeed would I be to expect it in a case where my very senses reject their own evidence. Yet mad am I not, and very surely do I not dream. But tomorrow I die, and today I would unburden my soul. My immediate purpose is to place before the world, plainly, succinctly, and without comment, a series of mere household events. And their consequences, these events have terrified, tortured, destroyed me. Yet I will not attempt to expound them. To me they have presented little but horror. To many they will seem less terrible than Baroque's. Hereafter perhaps some intellect may be found which will reduce my phantasm to the commonplace. Some intellect more calm, more logical, and far less excitable than my own, which will perceive in the circumstances I detail with awe nothing more than an ordinary succession of very natural causes and effects. From my infancy I was noted for the docility and humanity of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions. I was especially fond of animals, and was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these I spent most of my time. Never was I so happy as when feeding and caressing them. This peculiarity of character grew with my growth, and in my manhood I derived from it one of my principal sources to pleasure. To those who have cherished an affection of a faithful and sagacious dog, I need hardly be at the trouble of explaining the nature or the intensity of such the gratification thus derivable. There is something in the unselfish and self-sacrificing love of a brute which goes directly to the heart of him who has had frequent occasion to test the paltry friendship and gossamer fidelity of mere man. I married early, and was happy to find in my wife a disposition not uncongenial with my own. Observing my partiality for domestic pets, she lost no opportunity in procuring those of the most agreeable kind. We had birds, a goldfish, a fine dog, rabbits, a small monkey, and a cat. This latter was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black and sagacious to an astonishing degree. In speaking of his intelligence, my wife, her heart was not a little tinctured with superstition, made frequent allusion to the ancient popular notion which regarded all black cats as witches in disguise. Not that she was ever serious upon this point, and I just mention the matter at all for no better reason than it happens just now to be remembered. Pluto, this was the cat's name, was my favorite pet and playmate. I alone fed him, and he attended me wherever I went about the house. It was even with difficulty that I could prevent him from following me through the streets. Our friendship lasted in this manner for several years, during which my general temperament and character, through the instrumentality of the fiend intemperance, had, I blush to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. I grew day by day more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. I suffered myself to use intemperate language to my wife. At length I even offered her personal violence. My pets, of course, were made to feel the change in my disposition. I not only neglected but ill-used them. For Pluto, however, I still retained sufficient regard to restrain me from maltreating him, as I made no scruple of maltreating the rabbits, the monkey, or even the dog, when by accident or through affection they came in my way. But the disease grew upon me. For what disease is like alcohol? And at length even Pluto, who was now becoming old and consequently somewhat peevish, even Pluto began to experience the effects of my ill temper. One night, returning home much intoxicated from one of my haunts about town, I fancied the cat avoided my presence. I seized him when, in his fright at my violence, he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon instantly possessed me. I knew myself no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body. And more than a fiendish malevolence, gin-nurtured, thrilled every fibre of my frame. I took from my waistcoat pocket a penknife, opened it, grabbed the poor beast by the throat, and deliberately cut one of its eyes from the socket. I blush, I burn. I shudder, while I pen the damnable atrocity. When reason returned with the morning, when I had slept off the fumes of the night's debauch, I experienced a sentiment half of horror, half of remorse, for the crime of which I had been guilty. It was at best a feeble and equivocal feeling, and the soul remained untouched. I again plunged into excess and soon drowned in wine all the memory of the deed. In the meantime, the cat slowly recovered. The socket of the lost eye presented, it is true, of frightful appearance, but he no longer appeared to suffer any pain. He went about the house as usual, but, as might be expected, fled in extreme terror at my approach. I had so much of my old heart left as to be at first grieved by this evident dislike on the part of a creature who had once so loved me. But this feeling soon gave place to irritation. And then came, as if to my final and irrevocable overthrow, the spirit of perverseness. Of this spirit, philosophy takes no account. Yet I am not more sure that my soul lives than I am that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses of the human heart, one of the indivisible primary faculties of sentiments, which give direction to the character of man, who has not 100 times found himself committing a vile or stupid action for no other reason than because he knows he should not. Have we not a perpetual inclination in the teeth of our best judgment to violate that which is law merely because we understand it to be such? The spirit of perverseness, I say, came to my final overthrow. It was this unfathomable longing of the soul to vex itself, to offer violence to its own nature, and to do wrong for wrong's sake only, that urged me to continue and finally consummate the injury that I had inflicted on the unoffending brute. One morning in cold blood, I slipped a noose about its neck and hung it to the limb of a tree. Hung it with the tears streaming from my eyes and with the bitterest remorse in my heart. Hung it because I knew that it had loved me, and because I had felt it had given me no reason of offense. Hung it because I knew, in doing so, I was committing a sin. A deadly sin that would so jeopardize my immortal soul as to place it, if such a thing were possible, even beyond the reach of the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God. On the night of which this most cruel deed was done, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. The curtains of my bed were in flames. The whole house was blazing. It was with great difficulty that my wife, a servant, and myself made our escape from the conflagration. The destruction was complete. My entire worldly wealth was swallowed up, and I resigned myself thenceforward to despair. I'm above the weakness of seeking to establish a sequence of cause and effect between disaster and the atrocity, but I'm detailing a chain of facts, and wish to not leave even a possible link imperfect. On the day succeeding the fire, I visited the ruins. The walls, with one exception, had fallen in. And this exception was found a compartment wall, not very thick, which stood about the middle of the house, and against which had rested the head of my bed. The plastering here had, in great measure, resisted the action of fire, a fact which I attributed to its having recently... The plastering here, in great measure, resisted the action of fire, a fact which I attributed to its having been recently spread. Okay, I read that right, I just don't understand it. About this wall, a dense crowd was collected, and many persons seemed to be examining a peculiar portion of it with very minute and eager attention. The words "strange," "singular," and other similar expressions excited my curiosity. I approached and saw, as if graven in bas relief upon the white surface, the figure of a gigantic cat. The impression was given with an accuracy truly marvelous. There was a rope around the animal's neck. When I first beheld this apparition, for I could scarcely regard it as thus, my wonder and my terror were extreme. But at length reflection came to my aid. The cat, I remembered, had been hung in a garden adjacent to my house. Upon the alarm of fire, this garden had been immediately filled by the crowd, by some of whom the animal must have been cut from the tree and thrown through an open window into my chamber. This had probably been done with the view of arousing me from sleep. The falling of other walls had compressed the victim of my cruelty into the substance of the freshly spread plaster, the lime of which, with the flames and the ammonia from the carcass, had then accomplished the portraiture as I saw it. Although I thus readily accounted to my reason, if not altogether to my conscience, for the startling fact just detailed, it did not the less fail to make a deep impression upon my fancy. For months I could not rid myself of the phantasm of the cat, and during this period there came back into my spirit a half sentiment that seemed, but was not, remorse. I went so far as to regret the loss of the animal, and to look about me upon the vile haunts which I now habitually frequented, for another pet of the same species, of somewhat similar appearance, with which to supply its space. One night I sat, half stupefied, in a den of more than infamy. My attention was suddenly drawn to some black object, reposing upon the head of one of the immense hogsheads of gin or rum, which constituted the chief furniture of the apartment. I had been looking steadily at the top of this hogshead for some minutes, and what now caused me surprise was the fact that I had not sooner perceived the object thereupon. I approached it and touched it with my hand. It was a black cat, a very large one, fully as large as Pluto, and closely resembling him in every aspect but one. Pluto had not a white hair on any portion of his body, but this cat had a large, although indefinite splotch of white covering nearly the whole region of the breast. Upon my touching him, he immediately arose, purred loudly, and rubbed against my hand, and appeared delighted with my notice. This, then, was the very creature of which I was in search. I am at once offered to purchase it of the landlord, but person made no claim to it, knew nothing of it, had never seen it before. I continued my caresses, and when I prepared to go home, the animal evinced a disposition to accompany me. I permitted it to do so, occasionally stooping and patting it as I proceeded. When it reached the house, it domesticated itself at once and became immediately a great favorite with my wife. For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. This was just the reverse of what I had anticipated, but I know not why it was. Its evident fondness for myself rather disgusted and annoyed me. And by slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyance rose into the bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature, a certain sense of shame, and remembrance of my former deed of cruelty, preventing me from physically abusing it. I did not for some weeks strike or otherwise violently ill-use it. But gradually, very gradually, I came to look upon it with unutterable loathing, and to flee silently from its odious presence, as though from the breath of pestilence. What added, no doubt, to my hatred of the beast was the discovery on the morning after I brought it home that, like Pluto, it had also been deprived of one of its eyes. This circumstance, however, only endeared it to my wife, who, as I already said, possessed in high degree that humanity of feeling, which had once been my distinguishing trait, and the source of many of my simplest and purest pleasures. With my aversion to this cat, however, its partiality for myself seemed to increase. It followed my footsteps with a pertinacity which it would be difficult to make the reader comprehend. Whenever I sat, it would crouch beneath my chair or spring upon my knees, covering me with its loathsome caresses. If I rose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly throw me down, or fastening its long and sharp claws in my dress, clamber in this manner to my breast. At such times, although I longed to destroy it with a blow, I was yet withheld from doing, partially by a memory of a former crime, but chiefly, and I confess it at once, by absolute dread of the beast. This dread was not exactly a dread of physical evil, and yet I should be at a loss to how otherwise describe it. I'm almost ashamed to own, yes, even in this felon's cell, I'm almost ashamed to own that the terror and horror which the animal inspired upon me had been heightened to one of the merest chimeras it would be possible to conceive. My wife had called my attention more than once to the character of the mark of white hair, of which I have spoken, which constituted the sole visible difference between the strange beast and the one I had destroyed. The reader will remember that this mark, although large, had been originally very indefinite, but by slow degrees nearly imperceptible, and which for a long time my reason struggled to reject as fanciful, it had at length assumed a rigorous distinctness of an outline. It was now the representation of an object that I shuddered to name, and for this above all I loathed and dreaded, and would have rid myself of the monster had I dared. It was now, I say, the image of a hideous, a ghastly thing, the gallows. Oh, mournful terror, engine of the horror of crime, the agony and of death. And now I was indeed wretched beyond wretchedness of mere humanity, and a brute beast, whose fellow I had contemptuously destroyed. A brute beast to work out for me a man fashioned in the image of high God. So much of insufferable woe. Alas, neither by day or by night I knew the blessing of rest any more. During the former, the creature left me no moment alone, and in the latter I started hourly from dreams of unutterable fear, to find the hot breath of that thing upon my face, and its vast weight, an incarnate nightmare that I had no power to shake off, incumbent eternally upon my heart. Beneath the pressure of torment such as the feeble remnant of the good within me succumbed. Beneath the pressure of torment such as these, the feeble remnant of the good within me had succumbed. Evil thoughts became my sole intimates. The darkest and most evil thoughts. The moodiness of my normal temper increased to a hatred of all things and of all mankind, while from the sudden, frequent, and ungovernable outbursts of a fury to which I now blindly abandoned myself, my uncomplaining life, alas, was the most usual and the most patient of sufferers. One day she accompanied me upon some household errand into the cellar of the old building which her poverty compelled us to inhabit. The cat followed me down the steep stairs, and, nearly throwing me headlong, exasperated me into madness. Uplifting an axe, and forgetting in my wrath the childish dread which had hitherto stayed my hand, I aimed a blow at the animal, which of course would have proved instantly fatal had it descended as I wished. But this blow was arrested by the hand of my wife, goaded by the interference into a rage more than demoniacal. I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe in her brain. She fell dead upon the spot without a groan. Shit, I don't think I've read this before. Holy crap, this is like... wow. Okay. The narrator's a piece of shit. This hideous murder accomplished, I set myself forthwith, and with entire deliberation, to the task of concealing the body. I knew that I could not remove it from the house, either by day or by night, without the risk of being observed by the neighbors. Many projects entered my mind. At one period, I thought of cutting the corpse into minute fragments and destroying them by fire. At another, I'd resolved to dig a grave for it in the floor of the cellar. Again, I deliberated about casting it in the well in the yard, about packing it in a box as if merchandise with the usual arrangements, and so getting a porter to take it from the house. Finally, I hit upon what I considered a far better expedient way than either of these. I determined to wall it up in the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages are recorded to have walled up their victims. For a purpose such as this, the cellar was well adapted. Its walls were loosely constructed, and had lately been plastered throughout with a rough plaster, which the dampness of the atmosphere had prevented from hardening. Moreover, in one of the walls was a projection, caused by a false chimney or fireplace that had been filled up and made to resemble the rest of the cellar. I made no doubt that I could readily displace the bricks at this point, insert the corpse, and wall the hole up as before, so that no eye could detect anything suspicious. What is with Poe and hiding bodies in buildings? Like, he did it with the Cask of Amontillado. He did it with the Telltale Heart. He's doing it again in the Black Cat. I think he tried to do it in the Fall of the House of Usher. Is there something you want us to know, Poe? And in this calculation I was not deceived. By means of a crowbar, I easily dislodged the bricks, and having carefully deposited the body against the inner wall, I propped it up in that position, while with little trouble, I relaid the whole structure as it originally stood. Having procured mortar, sand, and hair, and with every possible precaution, I prepared a plaster which could not be distinguished from the old, and with this I very carefully went over the new brickwork. When I had finished, I felt satisfied that all was right. The wall did not present the slightest appearance of having been disturbed. The rubbish on the floor was picked up with the minutest care. I looked around triumphantly and said to myself, "Here at last. Then my effort has not been in vain." My next step was to look for the beast which had been the cause of so much wretchedness, for I had at length firmly resolved to put it to death. Had I been able to meet with it at that moment, there could have been no doubt of its fate. But it appeared the crafty animal had been alarmed at the violence of my previous anger, and forebore to present itself in my present mood. It is impossible to describe or imagine the blissful sense of relief which the absence of this detested creature occasioned my bosom. It did not make its appearance during the night, and thus for one night at least, since its introduction into the house, I soundly and tranquilly slept. I slept, even with the burden of murder upon my soul. Second and third day passed, and still my tormentor came not. Once again I breathed as a free man. The monster in terror had fled the premises forever. I should behold it no more. My happiness was supreme. The guilt of my dark deed disturbed me but little. Some few inquiries had been made, but these had been readily answered. Even a search had been instituted, but of course nothing was to be discovered. I looked upon my future felicity as secured. Upon the 4th day of the assassination, a party of the police came very unexpectedly into the house and proceeded again to make rigorous investigation of the premises. Secure, however, in the inscrutability of my place of concealment, I felt no embarrassment whatever. The officers bade me accompany them in their search. They left no nook or corner unexplored. At length, for a third or fourth time, they descended into the cellar. I quivered not in a muscle. My heart beat calmly as the one who slumbers in innocence. I walked the cellar from end to end. I folded my arms upon my bosom and roamed easily to and fro. The police were thoroughly satisfied and prepared to depart. The glee at my heart was too strong to be restrained. I burned to say but one word by way of triumph, and to render doubly sure their assurance of my guiltlessness. "Gentlemen," I said at last, as the party ascended the steps, "I delight to have allayed your suspicions. I wish you all health and a little more courtesy. By the by, gentlemen, this is a very well-constructed house." The rabid desire to say something easily, I scarcely knew what I uttered at all. I must say excellently well-constructed house. These walls... Are you going, gentlemen? These walls are solidly put together. And here, through the mere frenzy of bravado, I rapped heavily with a cane, which I held in my hand, upon the very portion of the brickwork behind which stood the corpse of my wife, of my bosom. May God shield and deliver me from the fangs of the arch-fiend. No sooner had the reverberation of my blows sunk into silence than I was answered a voice from within the tomb by a cry, at first muffled and broken. like the sobbing of a child, and then quickly swelling into one long, loud, and continuous scream. Utterly anomalous and inhuman. A howl, a wailing shriek, half of horror and half of triumph, such as might have arisen only out of hell, conjointly with the throats of the damned in their agony, and of the demons that exult in their damnation. Of my own thoughts it is folly to speak. Oh, thank you, Sassy. I forgot I sneezed. Swooning, I staggered to the opposite wall. For one instant, the party on the stairs remained motionless, to the extremity of terror and awe. In the next, a dozen stout arms were toiling at the wall. It fell bodily. The corpse, already greatly decayed and clotted with gore, stood erect before the eyes of the spectators. Upon its head, a red extended mouth and solitary eye of fire, sat the hideous beast whose craft had seduced me into murder, and whose informing voice had consigned me to the hangman. I had walled the monster up within the tomb. How do you not notice that you did that, though? Poor kitty cat. It reads a little like Dostoevsky, not gonna lie. I'm pretty sure I read The Cats of Ulthar from Lovecraft. I can read it again though. It's a short one, and I feel my voice going. But next week I think we'll do more Lovecraft unless people have something in mind. Although I wonder. This follow my heart. Thank you. Motherfucker. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I'm looking up something real quick. Hold on, I'm trying to find something real quick. Man, fuck all, huh? Sorry, hold on. I'm looking for something specific. I'm looking for something from Dostoevsky that I remember but can't. Can't articulate. Sorry. I'll get all the feature presentations coming soon. I'm being stubborn. I don't even know if what I'm looking for is stream safe, TBH. This is a waste of time, I think. It's a waste of time. Anyway. Here's The Cats of Ulthar by, Lovecraft. It is said that in Ulthar, which lies beyond the river Sky, no man may kill a cat. And to this I can verily believe, as I gaze upon him who sitteth purring before the fire. For the cat is cryptic, and is close to strange things which men cannot see. He is the soul of antique Egyptus, and a bearer of the tales of forgotten cities in Meroe and Ophir. He's the kin of the jungle's lords, and heir to the secrets of hoary and sinister Africa. The Sphinx is his cousin, and he speaks her language, but he is more ancient than the Sphinx, and remembers that which she hath forgotten. In Ulthar, before ever the burgesses forbade the killing of cats, there dwelt an old cotter and his wife who delighted to trap and slay the cats of their neighbours. Why they did this I know not, save that many hate the voice of the cat in the night, and take it ill that cats should run stealthily about yards and gardens at twilight. Whatever the reason, this old man and woman took pleasure in trapping and slaying every cat which came near to their hovel, and some sounds heard after dark, many villagers fancied the manner of slaying was exceedingly peculiar. The villagers did not discuss such things with the old man and his wife, because of the habitual expression on the withered faces of the two, and because their cottage was so small and so darkly hidden under the spreading oaks at the back of a neglected yard. In truth, much as the owners of cats hated these odd folk, they feared them more, and instead of berating them as brutal assassins, merely took care that no cherished pet or mouser should stray toward the remote hovel under dark trees. And through some unavoidable oversight, a cat was missed, and sounds heard after dark. The loser would lament impotently, but console himself by thanking fate that it was not one of his children who had thus vanished. For the people of Ulthar were simple, and knew not whence it is all cats first came. One day a caravan of strange wanderers from the south entered the narrow cobbled streets of Ulthar. Dark wanderers they were, and unlike other roving folk who passed through the village twice every year. In the marketplace they told fortunes for silver, and bought gay beads from the merchants. What was the land these wanderers none could tell. It was seen that they were given to strange prayers, that they had painted on their sides of the wagons strange figures with human bodies and the heads of cats, hawks, rams, and lions. And the leader of the caravan wore a headdress with two horns and a curious disc betwixt the horns. Oh, so Egyptian symbology here. Crown of Isis or Hathor. There was in this singular caravan a little boy with no father or mother, but only a tiny black kitten to cherish. The plague had not been so kind to him. It had left them this small furry thing to mitigate his sorrow. And when one is very young, one can find great relief in the lively antics of a black kitten. So the boy, whom the dark people called Menes, smiled more often than he wept, as he sat playing with his graceful kitten on the steps of an oddly painted wagon. On the third morning of the wanderer's stay in Ulthar, Inez could not find his kitten, and as he sobbed aloud in the marketplace, certain villagers told him of the old man and his wife, and of sounds heard in the night. And when he heard these things, his sobbing gave place to meditation, and finally to prayer. He stretched out his arms toward the sun and prayed in a tongue no villager could understand. Though indeed the villagers did not try very hard to understand, since their attention was mostly taken up by the sky, the odd shapes the clouds were assuming. It was very peculiar, but as the little boy uttered his petition, there seemed to form overhead a shadowy, nebulous figure of exotic things, of hybrid creatures crowned with horn-flanked discs. Nature is full of such illusions to impress the imaginative. That night, the wanderers left Ulthar, but were never seen again. And the householders were troubled when they noticed that all in the village there was not a cat to be found. From each hearth, the familiar cat had vanished. Cats large and small, black, grey, striped, yellow and white. Old Cronon, the burgomaster, swore that the dark folk had taken the cats away in revenge for the killing of Miniz's kitten, and cursed the caravan and the little boy. But Nith, the lean notary, declared that the old cotter and his wife were more likely persons to suspect, for the hatred of cats was notorious and increasingly bold. Still, no one durst complain of the sinister couple, even when little at all, the innkeeper's son, vowed that he had twilight seen all the cats in Ulthar, in that accursed yard under the trees, pacing very slowly and solemnly in a circle around the cottage, two abreast as if in performance of some unheard-of rite of beasts. The villagers did not know how much to believe from so small a boy, and though they feared that the evil pair had charmed the cats to their death, they preferred not to chide the old cotter till they met him outside his dark and repellent yard. So Ulthar went to sleep in vain anger. When the people awakened at dawn, behold, every cat was back at his accustomed hearth. Large and small, black, grey, striped, yellow and white, none was missing. Very sleek and fat did the cats appear, and sonorous with purring content. The old citizens talked with one another of the affair and marvelled not a little. Old Cronon insisted that the dark folks who had taken them, since the cats did, not return alive from the cottage of the ancient man and his wife. But all agreed on one thing, that the refusal of the cats to eat their portions of meat and drink their saucers of milk were extremely curious, and for 2 whole days the sleek, lazy cats of Ulthar would touch no food, but only doze by the fire in the sun. It was fully a week before the villagers noticed no lights were appearing at dusk in the windows of the cottage under the trees. Then the lean Nith remarked that no one had seen the old man and his wife since the nights the cats roll away. In another week, the burgomaster decided to overcome his fears and call at the strangely silent dwelling as a matter of duty. Though in doing so he was careful to take with him Shang the blacksmith and Thull, the cutter of stone, as witnesses. When they had broken down the frail door, they found only this: 2 cleanly picked human skeletons on the earthen floor, and a number of singular beetles crawling in the shadowy corners. There was subsequently much talking among the burgesses of Ulthar. Zoth, the coroner, disputed at length with Nith, the lean notary, and Cronon and Shang and Thol were overwhelmed with questions. Even little at all, the innkeeper's son, was closely questioned and given sweetmeat as a reward. They talked to the old cotter and his wife, to the caravan of dark wanderers, of small Miniz and to his black kitten, of the prayer of Miniz in the sky during that prayer, and of the doings of the cats on the night the caravan left, and what was later found in the cottage under the dark trees in the repellent yard. And in the end, the burgesses paused. In the end, the burgesses passed, That remarkable law which is told by the traders of Hatheg and discussed by the travelers in Ner, namely, that in Ulthar no man may kill a cat. God, I gotta read more Lovecraft. I can't remember if I've read The Nameless City before. I bet that I have. I bet in the early days of the Spooks streams, I have read these things. I should keep a tally. It's probably nigh on impossible now. How many streams of this have I done? How many streams of this have I done? Oh, shit. Probably more than 100. Did you say that it's the cat's meow? I would. Wait a second. How many spook streams have I done? Oh my god, the poor person who would go through and like tally a list of everything I've already read. I ain't doing that shit. I would sooner repeat it. Yeah, but we ought to have more Lovecraft. It's been too long. Almost 11. I'm trying to decide how tired I am. I can hear that my voice is shot. I'll probably stream tomorrow. It'll probably be something silly. I gotta start Phoenix Wright. Oh, I gotta bother people about Mod Night. Sassy, can you do me a favor? You've already done so much for me. Ah, I feel bad. No. Don't overdo it. I should rest. I should. I was gonna ask you to remind me tomorrow. Or otherwise bug the secret server about Mod Night, because I keep forgetting to do that. You should figure out when the family is available. That's also a thing I need to do. There was some other thing I needed to do. Phoenix Wright. I need to start playing Phoenix Wright. Oh god. That's my other voice acting game. Oy vey. Alright, yeah, I'll deal with that eventually. Or what I'll do is I'll make a poll. No way I'm not woken up by pings. Alright, cool. That works. I think I will rest. Yeah, I'll also make a note. Do people want Phoenix right? Does it matter what people want? I feel like people are just fine with whatever I stream so long as I'm streaming. Ah, I'll worry about that shit later. Alright, no. Excuse me, I don't recall ordering anything. Okay, so what am I doing? Writing to myself. Phoenix, Riggett, and that is on schedule. Alright, cool. Alright, it was almost a 2-hour stream. Not bad for a first day back. But I think I will rest up a little bit. I always say it, but I prefer to watch people play what they want to play because they're genuinely happy enjoying themselves. Yeah, I've been waiting to play Phoenix Wright for years now, and I think it's time to just do it. And like, I'm gonna be streaming for a long time. It doesn't mean that I'm doing this and not something else. It just means I'll be doing something else later. Like, after Hades is gonna come Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. Like, everyone's gonna get what they want eventually. And it's not even about that, because, like, I'm still getting used to it, but in my heart of hearts, I kind of know. Y'all don't care that much. You're more so here for me, which is still weird to me. Even after all this time. But the game is just the excuse we have to hang out. But everyone will still get what they want. I promise. We're gonna get through Hades, we're gonna... God, the backlog is so long. But like, people will get what they want. And in doing so, I will get what I want too. Just this little bunker where we can be happy. Finally, I'll win the lottery. Aww. I mean, if I win it, you'll get some. Which would be hard because I don't play the lottery, but I can start. I don't know. Honestly, I feel like I've already won the lottery. Yeah, I'm just gonna let that hang. You know what I mean. If you know what I mean. If you don't, well, you don't. I'm very content with the people that I have in my life right now. Only one person's missing. If I won the lottery, I wouldn't say anything, but there'd be signs. Oh. Oh, I can imagine. Like hype trains. Yo. Ugh. You better take care of that fucking kitchen table. Actually, I don't think the kitchen table would be an issue at that point. I'm just imagining you with, like, a Vladimir Putin, like, length kitchen table just to, like, show me. So it's like, are you worried about my kitchen table now, Wolfie? Christ. What? Listen, kitchen tables are important. I have a monogamy kitchen table. Yeah, I bet you would. Oh, I bet you would. Gods, if I ever bumble into money, I'm definitely getting you that as a joke. I will find a monogamy kitchen table. Mahogany, not monogamy. What the I need to sleep. Monogamy kitchen table. What the fuck, Wolfie? To be fair, those words do sound similar. I'm gonna sign off before I say any other weird shit. In the meantime, do not eat or drink any questionable substances. Make smart decisions. Do not die. Dying is absolutely forbidden. And I will see all of you wonderful people at a later time. I'm probably gonna do Cyberpunk tomorrow because I just have the craving for it. But then we'll get back to our regularly scheduled programming probably on Sunday. I'm faithful to one kitchen table and only one. So long as it's your kitchen table, I'm cool with that. So long as that kitchen table feeds you, I'm happy. That's not Streamlabs. This is Streamlabs. Doop.